Good evening, everyone. Tonight's talk is going to be entitled Awakening to the Tao. I've already lit the candle of harmony, as you can see, and hope you enjoy it. So, first we'll breathe out any tension that we have. Let's feel relaxed, at peace. So, awakening to the Tao. So, Tao is a Chinese word signifying way, path, route, key, or sometimes more loosely, doctrine or principle. Within the context of traditional Chinese philosophy and religion, the Tao is the intuitive knowing of life that cannot be grasped full-heartedly as just a concept, but is known nonetheless through actual living experience of one's everyday being. It is not a religion and cannot really be pinned down by conceptual views. Most people will be aware of Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching and its opening lines. Tao can be talked about, but not the eternal Tao. Names can be named, but not the eternal name. As the origin of heaven and earth, it is nameless. As the mother of all things, it is nameable. So, as ever hidden, we should look at its inner essence. As always manifest, we should look at its outer aspects. These two flow from the same source, though differently named, and both are called mysteries. The mystery of mysteries is the door of all essence. The mystery of mysteries is the door of all essence. Although attributed to Lao Tzu, it is thought now to be a composite composition, taking its material from many different sources. In popular culture, we have the Tao of flower arranging, the Tao of poetry, the Tao of painting, etc., using the word in its loosest form as meaning the way in a more limited sense. The word Zen is also used in a similar way, as in the book of the Zen of motorcycle maintenance and many, many others. Like all spiritual concepts, we may talk about the Tao, but this is only an intellectual understanding. Only by direct experience can we really know. It is in fact, as the Secret Doctrine tells us, an omnipresent, eternal, boundless and immutable principle on which all speculation is impossible, since it transcends the power of human conception and could only be dwarfed by any human conception, expression or similitude. It is beyond the range and reach of thought, in the words of Mandukya, unthinkable and unspeakable. Yet volumes upon volumes are written about something we can never comprehend mentally. When the universe comes alive, in cyclic manifestation, we then start to give names to things. It comes within the range and reach of thought. Mula Prakriti, the mother of all things. It is easy to think of Tao as the absolute, but as it says above, the unnameable Tao and the mother of all things come from the same source. We can see that the Tao is something purposely very nebulous and evades easy interpretations. Early theosophical literature says really very little regarding the Tao or Taoism. The Secret Doctrine in the introduction briefly mentions the Tao Te Ching and Lao Tzu, saying that without commentaries the text was unintelligible and that the key lay in the hands of the initiated priests of the time. As with Buddhist scriptures, the Western Orientalists of the Victorian era gave only dry translations, lacking in spirit. Since then, hundreds of translations and commentaries on both Buddhist and Taoist texts have been published in the West by learned practitioners and initiated priests, which gives us a little more insight, but ultimately Tao is only accessible by the intuition. It is not understandable by the intellect, as said. But of course, all esoteric things, all inner things need to be understood by the intuition. And I don't think we really need commentaries. Commentaries can confuse the issue, often confuse the issue. We have to look within our own being to find the truth. In Taoism, of course, there is the concept of yin and yang, generally regarded as male and female respectively. Also light and dark, and other such seeming opposites that are regarded in Taoism as complementary. They are also matter and spirit, the fusion and interplay of the two, bringing the manifested universe into being. The Secret Doctrine again tells us that spirit or consciousness and matter are, however, to be regarded not as independent realities, but as the two facets or aspects of the Absolute, Parabrahma, which constitute the basis of conditioned being, whether subjective or objective. Apart from cosmic substance, cosmic ideation could not manifest as individual consciousness, since it is only through a vehicle of matter that consciousness wells up as I am I, a physical basis being necessary to focus a ray of the universal mind at a certain stage of complexity. Again, apart from cosmic ideation, cosmic substance would remain an empty abstraction, and no emergence of consciousness could ensue. So another Taoist classic, the I Ching, or Book of Changes, composed over 3,000 years ago, gives us a complex philosophical system consisting of 64 hexagrams, made up of 6 broken and 6 unbroken lines, which give various insights on many subjects, spiritual, political and personal, depending on the motive and understanding of the individual. It is widely used as a divination method, though it does not tell the future, just points out courses of action that can be taken. I have been surprised in the past by its accuracy, and it seems to work with one's subconscious mind to provide guidelines. But to go into this would need many lectures. On a deeper level, the hexagrams contain many esoteric secrets available only to those who are at a level of consciousness where they can have some grasp of these teachings. Therefore, like many texts, the deeper meanings are hidden from the profane eye, though there are teachings available on many levels. There is also a tradition of alchemy in Taoism, from the lower physical idea of turning base metal into gold to the highest spiritual practice of refining our nature to be able to spiritualize our minds. Like most religions, although it's not a religion, Taoism had periods when it degenerated, and there were individuals and adepts who came to restore it to its original purity. There is lower tantric Taoism, which uses sexual techniques and also physical exercises attached to it. The complete reality school, which arose during the Yuan dynasty and which ran from 1279 to 1369 AD, was one of these movements that arose to revive the purely spiritual aspects of Taoism. One of its followers, Chang Po Tuan, composed the inner teachings of Taoism, and these inner teachings of Taoism gave concise but enigmatic statements on Taoism and the deeper esoteric meanings of alchemical language, Another teacher, Liu Yiming, wrote a commentary on this work to bring more clarity to it. It's such a vast subject, so in this talk I will have to focus on one aspect, which I regard to be the most important. So for this talk, I'm going to discuss how the Tao manifests in our lives and how we can use its power in a practical way. And this is most appropriate to us as individuals. So the Tao is something which can be drawn on by all of us. It is said in the Tao Te Ching to linger like gossamer. It has only a hint of existence, and yet when you draw upon it, it is inexhaustible. It says, look at it, but you cannot see it. Its name is formless. Listen to it, but you cannot hear it. Its name is soundless. Grasp it, but you cannot get it. Its name is incorporeal. These three attributes are unfathomable. Therefore, they fuse into one. Its upper side is not bright, its underside not dim. Continually, the unnameable moves on until it returns beyond the realm of things. We call it the formless form, the imageless image. We call it the undefinable and unimaginable. Confront it, and you do not see its face. Follow it, and you do not see its back. Yet equipped with this timeless Tao, you can harness present realities. To know the origins is initiation into the Tao. So this again is emphasising that we must not try to define the Tao. Like all other esoteric systems, it is leading us beyond any structured systems of thought to the realm of the intuition, where our mind is illumined by Buddhi to become Manasa Tajasa, or the illumined mind. This is the only way to be initiated into the Tao. As the light on the path says again, for within you is the light of the world, the only light that can be shed upon the path. If you are unable to perceive it within you, it is useless to look for it elsewhere. It is beyond you, because when you reach it, you have lost yourself. It is unattainable, because it forever recedes. You will enter the light, but you will never touch the flame. And I use that quote quite a lot. It's very, very insightful to meditate upon. But at the other end of the scale, the Tao Te Ching gives practical advice to live by. It tells us that if we don't exalt the talented rivalry, contention and jealousy will die out. And that if we don't prize material goods and hoard them, then robbery and stealing will disappear. So if you don't exalt rivalry, contention and jealousy, and if you don't prize material goods and hoard them, robbery and stealing will die out, and jealousy will die out. It says in the Tao Te Ching, without going out of your door, you can know the ways of the world. Without peeping through your window, you can see the way of heaven. The farther you go, the less you know. Thus the sage knows without travelling, sees without looking, and achieves without ado. She is once again calling us to look within rather than without, to concentrate on inner development. It is easy to think that by travelling the world, going to India or China or Japan, we can learn more. But of course, this is not necessarily true. As said, the journey is within. Hafiz, the Sufi poet, wrote, I feel in need of a great pilgrimage, so I sat still for 3 days. That is a very, very profound statement. I felt in need of a great pilgrimage, so I sat still for 3 days. So this is not to say that to go on actual pilgrimage is not useful, but we do not have to do a physical one. In Buddhism, when it is said we must enter the homeless state, this is again referring to a state of consciousness. It does not mean to desert one's family, as many have mistakenly done. taking the dead letter meaning. It is just the same with pilgrimages. Just to go on a physical pilgrimage will not automatically transform our consciousness. It's just as likely to happen in one's own living room. The indefinable nature of the Tao gives it mystery and a great beauty. It opens the mind and expands the consciousness. Its mystery leads us on. Essentially, all is one. The concepts that hide it from us are many. Confucianism, Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, Taoism, even the conceptual side of theosophy hide this truth. There is no religion higher than truth, as our motto tells us, or any philosophical system. Joy Mills, a theosophist, paraphrasing the theosophical masters, says, "Again and again, Sinnett and Hume were advised that it was only upon the serene and placid surface of the unruffled mind, a mind open and free from the contamination of selfish interests and preoccupations, that the light of truth might shine. The inquiry, in other words, must be from an authentic openness, not the kind of seeking that already is convinced of the answer." Now, Ancestor Liu, a Taoist adept, talking about states reached in meditation, says that to restore the mind to its unfragmented origin, sit quietly and meditate. First count the breaths, then tune the breath until it is imperceptible. Sense the body as like the undifferentiated absolute, and you won't hear anything. Those who can regain their composure after a mountain crumbles before them are second best. Not even being startled is expertise. And this is mirrored in The Voice of the Silence by H.P. Blavatsky when it says, "Before the soul can see, the harmony within must be attained, and fleshy eyes be rendered blind to all illusion." Fleshy eyes be rendered blind to all illusion. And before the soul can hear, the image man has to become as deaf to roarings as to whispers, to cries of bellowing elephants as to the silvery buzzing of the golden firefly. So that's very, very insightful. Let's put the light on, it's getting a bit dark. Now that's much better, you can see me. So the secret of the golden flower, a blending of Taoism and Buddhism, tells us about this tuning of breath and mind. It says that when the breath is silent, so is the mind. But when the breath is coarse, the mind is too, and vice versa. And we have to be wary of distraction and oblivion, two obstacles in meditation. Ancestor Lu picks up this last point when describing the states reached in meditation. As for the states experienced through the exercise of quiescence, first there is dullness, oblivion and random thought. Then there is lightness and freshness. Later it is like being inside curtains of gold mesh. Finally, it is like returning to life from death. A clear breeze under the bright moon, coming and going. The scenery, unobstructed. Rather lovely, that. As for the states experienced through the exercise of quiescence, first there is dullness, oblivion and random thought. Then there is lightness and freshness. Later it is like being inside curtains of gold mesh. Finally, it is like returning to life from death. A clear breeze under the bright moon, coming and going. The scenery, unobstructed. So, the bright moon is a term used in Taoism and Buddhism to symbolise the illumined mind, and the scenery unobstructed may refer to the freedom achieved in this state. Now this brings into the concept of Wu Wei, and this brings it into the arena. Wu Wei is an important concept in Taoism that literally means non-action or non-doing. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu explains that those who are wholly in harmony with the Tao behave in a completely natural, uncontrived way. The goal of spiritual practice for the human being is, according to Lao Tzu, the attainment of this purely natural way of behaving. In society, we act in ways that we have been taught are the right ways to act, and if anyone diverts from the accepted way of behaviour, then they will be frowned upon or regarded as mad. Which again brings me to one of my favourite quotes, which everyone will have heard me say so many times. It seems to crop up every time I give a talk, and that is Plato's statement that heaven-sent madness is preferable to man-made sanity. This is actually my favourite quote in any spiritual teachings or literature. It's one of the most profound statements I've ever heard, because sanity is man-made in many ways. If we act under the guidance of our higher self, we will act naturally, which will seem unnatural to others. As H.P. Blavatsky tells us, quoting the Manjunatta Sutra, a time will come when justice will have died, leaving as its successor blind law, and as its guru and guide selfishness. When wicked things and deeds will have to be regarded as meritorious, and holy actions as madness. So acting naturally is out of step with modern society, but it returns us to our attunement with nature and will help us to think and act in ways that are beneficial to nature and all our fellow creatures in general. If we are in tune with the Tao, we are beyond any kinds of rules or regulations. Until then, we have to abide by them to a certain extent, but in an intelligent way. Remember, most rules are created by materialistic governments or dogmatic religions, but we as theosophists and people on the spiritual path, or true spiritual path, have enough enlightened rules set up by adepts to have an idea of how we should really behave in society and towards our brothers and sisters, which is often the opposite of what society coerces us into doing. But when we are in tune with the Tao, all conceptual rules disappear, and we are in a completely different state of being, where we act spontaneously in ways baffling to the man in the street. H.P. Blavatsky says that it takes us out of the calculation of the ranks of the living altogether. Eventually, when we get to a higher level, we are dancing to the beat of a different drummer. So Taoism was expert in using the microscopic world to develop an awareness of the macroscopic and to express the spiritual, as in the book that inspired this talk, Awakening to the Tao, by Liu Yiming. And this book illustrates what I've just said. I mentioned Liu Yiming earlier as writing a commentary on the inner teachings of Taoism. This book is the culmination of his life of studies. He was born in 1737 and eagerly studied Buddhism, Taoism and Confucianism. Liu went on an actual pilgrimage to seek true learning. On his travels he met someone called the Old Man of the Valley of Crypts, who explained to him that many pseudo-Taoist cults had arisen that were obscuring the true Taoist teachings, which he imparted to Liu, who from then on became an ardent student of the original teachings. In 1772, he met his second teacher, the Old Man of the Immortals Station, and he described this experience as like being raised from the bottom of an immeasurably deep pit to the top of an immeasurably high mountain. Freed from doubt forever, Liu now felt as though he saw the whole world in the palm of his hand and encountered the Tao wherever he was. So the book consists of meditations on living in the light of the Tao, and like many other books of Taoism, gives little to the intellect and invites us to exercise our intuitions. What is a chaos to the senses is often a cosmos to the reason or intuition. Rumi stated that when you eventually see through the veils to how things really are, you will keep saying again and again, "This is certainly not like we thought it was." When you eventually see through the veils to how things really are, you will keep saying again and again, This is certainly not like we thought it was. What an amazingly profound statement that is. When we truly see with our divine eye, it will not resemble anything we have understood with our intellects, because the mode of seeing is so much different from the limited way we experience the world through our senses, which are called in Taoism and Buddhism the six thieves, because they rob us of our perception of reality. The six senses in this case are sight, sound, taste, touch, smell, and the mind, or the lower mind, which is called the chief hoodlum, because it can be most effective in masking our clear seeing of the truth. When we look into the teachings of Taoism, we begin to realise that they are identical to all other teachings that we study and meditate upon. It is all the same, just different ways to the same goal, as all students of theosophy and spiritual literature will know. There are different ways for different temperaments and different cultures. In the early stages, we need signposts and guidelines. But what appeals to one will not appeal to another. This is why theosophy shows us that if we develop the right attitude to whatever path we follow, it will lead to the same place. By the right attitude is meant going beyond the man-made dogmas and external rules. We must learn to be guided by what is within us, to throw light on the path by the illumination of our mind, by correct study and meditation. We will find that the esoteric teachings of all the traditions are identical in essence. Only man-made elements make them appear different. Lao Tzu is reported to have said that at the centre of your being you have the answer. You know who you are and you know what you want. I have just three things to teach: simplicity, patience, compassion. These three are your greatest treasure. Simplicity, patience, compassion. These three are your greatest treasure. And how complicated we tend to make life. We have to return to this simplicity and have patience. It says in the voice of the silence, patience sweet, that naught can ruffle. The Tao Te Ching says, the Tao is like an empty bowl, which in being used can never be filled up. Fathomless it seems to be the origin of all things. It blunts all sharp edges. It unties all tangles. It harmonises all lights. It unites the world into one whole. Hidden in the deeps, yet it seems to exist forever. I do not know whose child it is. It seems to be the common ancestor of all, the father of all things. And this is the result of reliance upon the divine. We always want things to go the way we think is best for us, which consists of comfort and ease 24/7. But life isn't like that at all. Our higher self puts us through things that the personality dislikes intensely, but it's all for the greatest good. In time, through many trials, we begin to realise that all is one. The divine in us, the Tao, brings us to an awareness of this oneness. The great diversity of separateness begins to fade. All the tangles of our life are undone, all the lights harmonised into one light, and all the sharp edges in our nature are blunted, so that we reach harmony with nature and with the universe itself. We know that we are immortal as spiritual beings, and that there is no ending to our pilgrimage as far as we can conceive. This should give us a great hope that only grows as we become one with the Tao, with our true nature. Our relationship with our fellow human beings deepens and becomes profound and beautiful, as does our appreciation and love for all sentient beings, because we see beyond the masks and the clouds to the light that shines in the heart of everyone we meet, a reflection of the spiritual sun that illumines the way for each and every one of us. Then we will indeed say to ourselves, this is certainly not like we thought, not like we thought it was, but something far more wonderful that thought could never encompass. It's not like we thought it was because it's beyond thought. So to end with a quote from H.P. Blavatsky, though but a minority of our members are mystically inclined, yet in point of fact, the key to all our successes, as above enumerated, is in our recognition of the fact of the higher self. Colourless, cosmopolitan, unsectarian, sexless, unworldly, altruistic, and the doing of our work on that basis. To the secularist, the agnostic, the skialistic scientist, such results would have been unattainable, nay, would have been unthinkable. Peace societies are utopian because no amount of argument based upon exoteric considerations of social morals or expediency can turn the hearts of the rulers of nations away from selfish war and schemes of conquest. So, as said, reliance on the Tao, or whatever name we give it, will unite the world into one whole and end the great dire heresy of separateness that weans us from the rest. And this is the only way a universal brotherhood and sisterhood of humanity can truly work. Om Shanti, 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 peace, peace, peace. Love and peace to all beings. And thanks for listening. See you very soon.